Okay, Baruch Hashem. I'm quoting from the Bali and Sanhedrin and Daf Samach Zayin. Ela Mishpatim asher tasim lifnehem. These are the mishpatim that must be placed before them. Amar Rav Huna would declare to the assistants that were sitting with him in Beis Din, Havi li kelai, bring me my tools. Ritzua, sandala, the shofar. Ritzua, says Rashi, kedila halkos elu sha'ovrim al das Beis Din. This is the tool to deliver malchus to those people who violate the instructions of Beis Din. The sandal, the shoe. Can anyone guess what the sandal is for? Why does Beis Din need a sandal? For yibum, nachon. And the shofar. What's the shofar used for? What's the shofar? Well, that's only once every 50 years. What's the shofar more commonly used for? Shofar was the signal for shamta, for nidui. One of the tools that Beis Din has, when someone violates the instructions of Beis Din, they can be placed in various orders of magnitude of excommunication from society. Nidui, cherem, shamta goes by different names and different indications. The Mechilta in this week's parsha says a very very powerful line, which Rashi brings. Ela mishpatim asher tasim. Lahalacha, as the Gemara says, as the Gemara that we just quoted, the mishpatim asher tasim. This is not only saying what Moshe Rabbeinu was instructed to do to place before the Jewish people the laws that he's about to learn, but tasim milashon yisum. Even in modern Hebrew, we say yisum doesn't only mean to place, but it means to apply, to implement. Liyasem means to implement something. It means to concretize something. As the Midrash says in the Mechilta, tasim lifnehem, archem lifnehem keshulchan aruch. Place it before them like a set table. There's a statement of Rabbi Akiva. This term, keshulchan aruch, is a term that Rabbi Akiva uses throughout Divrei Chazal. Again, later on we see in the Sifri and Parshas Pinchas, right? Lasim lifnehem keshulchan aruch, that it's important to put the laws before the student like a set table. Rabbi Yosef Karo, in the introduction to his book, which itself was a abridged version of the magnum opus of Beis Yosef. It was meant to be a study guide. It was meant to be a tool to review the Beis Yosef. You know, this is going off a bit on a tangent over here, but there's a siman in Shulchan Aruch and Hilchos Halvah, where at the very, very end of the Sif, it says, Ad Kan Yom Lamed Aleph. That's what it says in all the standard editions of the Shulchan Aruch. Ad Kan Yom Lamed Aleph. And there are some Mefarshim that try to understand what this term means in the context of what we were just talking about a second ago, the random halachos and hilchos halva. But as is clear, the Shulchan Aruch was written with the intention of chazering it every 30 days. It was meant to go through the entire Shulchan Aruch once every 30 days. And there were certain milestones throughout the Sefer that Rav Yosef Karo put. And this is until, day 15. This is until, this is the end of week 3. And there are some remnants of that in the standard editions of the printing. There's a bit of a tangent. The point is that that this term, Shulchan Aruch, is how Chazal phrased the experience of receiving Torah in an orderly fashion. What does it mean, Shulchan Aruch? When the table is set, it means everything is easily accessible. The fork is over here, the cup is over there, the bread's in the center of the table, everyone can reach it. Right? Shulchan Aruch means easily accessible and applied. It can be applied. This is the secret of what Chazal are communicating to us. Ve'ele vav mosif al harishonim. That the vav indicates that it is a continuity of what we were just reading a moment ago. And what we were reading about a moment ago, last week, we were reading about Matan Torah. And the continuity of Matan Torah, Mosif al Rishonim, it's not just saying, and this was the content that they learned while they were standing at the mountain. No, there's a natural, thematic, and existential progression from the experience of Sinai to what we are learning about in the Parsha now. And the theme that the Torah is so strongly trying to deliver to us, which is something very, as we'll see, something that I believe is very, very unique to the Torah's whole grasp of reality that's trying to be imparted onto us, is that the ability for us to access and formulate a relationship with Elokus is inextricably linked to our capacity to apply liasem, ela mishpatim asher tasim. This is counterintuitive because often we relate to spiritual experience, to the elevation, to the connection to Elokus as something that is departed from this world. And there is truth to that. Right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Yoshev Marom, as the Nevi'im call him. Right? Shochein Ad, as David HaMelech says. Right? God is fundamentally not part of this world. Hu mekomo shel olam, eno olam mekomo. The world is in God. God is not in the world. The world is in God. So there is truth to this idea that God is ultimately transcendent and in a way disassociated from our reality. However, in a paradoxical, this is probably the ultimate paradox, that our ability to connect authentically to the Creator that revealed Himself at Sinai is dependent on our ability to be miasim. So what are we applying? What are we concretizing? We are concretizing the experience of Sinai itself. That's what we're concretizing. So that Sinai, God forbid, wouldn't just remain a historical milestone that took place 3,000 years ago, but can become something real and with continuity. I want to share a section from the Moreh early on, and this is a theme that the Rambam develops throughout his writings, but really gives it in a very, very powerful way. Already in the very, very beginning of the Sefer. The opening chapters of Moreh Nevuchim, as we know, are essentially a dictionary of sorts. They go through different munachim, different terms in Lashon HaKodesh that are used throughout the Nevi'im, explaining what they mean on the simple level, and explaining what they mean on a more essential level. This is in Perek Dalet on Erech Ra'ah, Hibit, Chazah. These three terms: to see, to peer, and to envision. These three terms that, generally speaking, are related, but they have important differences between them. So says the Rambam on the Lashon Hibit. V'chein hibit nofel al ha'abata ba'ayin ledavar. It's referring to when someone peers at something and places his eye in a concentrated way on something. Al tabit acharecha, right? Like what the Malachim say to Lot and his family as they're escaping Sodom. Don't look back. The tabeit ishto me'acharav, and Lot's wife did look behind. Right? V'hushal al ha'abatas haseichel v'hashkafaso al ha'isbonunus hadavar ad she'asigeu. This is not only with the physical material eye, this is also with the eye of the intellect, where you peer into something with the eye of the intellect until you're able to grasp it. V'hu amaro, lo he beat oven b'Yaakov, that God did not peer or did not see any iniquity in Yaakov. Not referring to the physical eye, Chalila, but rather that God did not see any iniquity that was worth noticing. What does that mean? God didn't see any iniquity in Yaakov. There's plenty. Until that point in the story, we know there's a lot of iniquity in the Jewish people. But God didn't, lo he beat ad shehisigeu. God didn't look at it carefully enough until He grasped it and made a big deal about it. Okay, He dealt with it in time, and some people were indeed punished for it, but it wasn't something noteworthy enough to characterize the relationship between God and the Jewish people. The relationship between God and the Jewish people is not characterized by the oven. Lo, he beat oven the Yaakov. Maybe he ra'ah oven, maybe God saw iniquity, but lo, he beat oven. V'chein amru, v'hi bitu achrei Moshe, as we're going to learn in a few parshas from now, Parshas Kisisa, that the Jewish people peered after Moshe. Aramu chacham shabo od zeh ha'inyan v'shu ha'agada al hayosem medaktikim acher pu'ulosav. And Chazal say that this was the Jewish people peering, so to speak. In the Gemara in Sanhedrin, they were trying to criticize Moshe that perhaps he was skimming off the top of the funds for the Beis Hamikdash, for the Mishkan rather. The Alzos Ha'ashala, and through this understanding of how he beat is with the eye of the intellect, right? Kol lashon ha'bata shaba be'eloka. As it says, Utmunas Hashem Yabit. That Moshe, and this is a pasuk in Sefer Bamidbar, that Moshe saw the image of God. V'chein amru, and Chazal said, Shebeschar zeh, that in the reward for how Moshe Rabbeinu conducted himself in his initial encounter with Hashem, Zachal l'shlosha devarim. He merited three great things. V'al zeh ne'emar, vayaster Moshe panav. That Moshe hid his face, referring to the initial interaction at the bush, at the burning bush. Ki arei mehabit el ha'elohim. Because he didn't want to stare into God. He didn't want to, again, not that he didn't want to see. He saw. It says that he saw and there was a burning bush. Right? And he saw the Malach Elohim, Balav Asesh. But he wasn't mebit. He vayar mehabit. He was afraid to do this grasp of the intellect. Lo she'elo yasigu ha'inayim. Not to say that God was able to be grasped with the physical eyes. Right? But rather the hibit that we explained before. The shubach lo olav hashalom, and Moshe Rabbeinu was praised for this. The ishpia olav ha'eloka yisbarach mituvo mashechiev lo shene'emar, and for this Moshe was rewarded with utmunas Hashem yabit. Later on in the Torah, we see that Moshe was able to be mebit. He was able to peer into with the eye of the intellect. This was his reward for his initial covering of the face. Omnam, however, says the Rambam, atzilei b'nei Yisrael, the youth, the lads of the Jewish people, referring to the story that we see at the ends of this week's parsha. Ve'el atzilei b'nei Yisrael lo shalach yado, that God did not strike them down. Vayechazu es ha'elohim vayochlu vayishtu, despite the fact that they saw God and ate and drank. What is that referring to? Says the Rambam, Heim harsu v'shilchu machshavosam v'yisigu. They were mebit. Moshe Rabbeinu was vayar me'abit. He was hesitant. He was afraid. He was almost embarrassed. He covered his face. He didn't want to peer with the eye of the intellect too far. Whereas the Atzilei B'nai Yisrael, it was no holds barred. Vayechazu es Elohim, they saw God, vayochlu vayishtu, and they had a party. What does that mean that they had a party? Right? As Unkla says, not vayochlu vayishtu literally. It was ki'ilu vayechlu vayishtu, that they were consuming the divine experience in the same way that someone consumes food when they're hungry. They had no limitations on themselves. And this is what it says upon them by Yuras Elokei Yisrael, that they saw the God of Israel. It's coming to chastise them for their unfettered viewing with the eye of the intellect. Says the Rama, the Atzilei B'nai Yisrael, the youth of the Jewish people, at that moment, they should have been destroyed right then and there. They atar aleim alav hashalom, but Moshe Rabbeinu prayed for them. And God decided to be patient with them. Ad shenisrafu b'tav'era. However, because they continued in their sin, they are eventually destroyed later on in Sefer Bamidbar in the incident of Taveira. Taveira, Bamasa, Kibros Hataiba, all these incidents. We'll get to that in a minute. The Nisraf Nadav Ba'aviu Ba'ol Moed, another Ben Avihu, who were also amongst those Atzilei B'nai Yisrael, they were also destroyed eventually in the Oel Moed in Parsha Shmini. Lafi Shma Sheba Bo Hakabala Ha'amitis. And all of this is explained in the true tradition. Where is the true tradition that the Rambam is referring to? The Rambam is referring to two midrashim in particular. One midrash that we're going to read right now in Shmos Rabbah, in Parsha Mem Hey. What do we say? Mem Hey. This is on Lamed Gimel. Sorry. Mem Hey. Siman Hey. This is a midrash on Parshas Kisisa on the pasuk Vayomer Hareini No Es Kvodecha. Moshe requests to see the honor of Hashem. The midrash quotes the pasuk from Mishlei. Ki tov amar lecha alei heina me'ashpilecha. It is better to be told come up than to be told go down. Zeh Moshe. This is referring to Moshe Rabbeinu. Kishenigla alav HaKadosh Baruch Hu basneh, when God revealed Himself to Moshe at the bush. Vayar Malach Hashem, that he saw the angel of God. Amar Rabbi Yehuda bar Nechemia, Tiron Haya Moshe Lenavua. Moshe at that time was a Tiron for prophecy. A Tiron. What does that mean, Tiron? In modern Hebrew, you say Tironut. Tironut is basic training. That's where that word comes from. Tiron. He was in basic training for prophecy. This is his first introduction to prophecy. He was being introduced to prophecy. He didn't know what he was doing. God needed to initiate him into prophecy. If I crank up the volume too much, I'm going to scare him. But if it's too low of a volume, he's not going to receive anything. He's not going to experience anything. Maybe he'll experience something, intuitive welling up inside of him, but it's not going to be loud enough for him to know that I'm actually revealing myself to him. That God appeared to him in the voice of his father. Rashi, in the beginning of Sefer Shmuel, says that this is a tactic that God uses with all the prophets. That Shmuel Hanavi is first time that he hears the voice of Hashem. Who does he think is speaking to him? And no, that's his father. His father's Elkanah, but who does he think is talking to him? Eli. He thinks that Eli is calling him. He gets up, he goes to Eli, he says, "You called me, what do you want?" He says, "No, I didn't call you, go back to sleep." And this happens 3 times, and Eli understands, okay, he's experiencing prophecy. This is a tactic that Hashem uses to not freak out the prophet initially when he's first experiencing prophecy, that the voice should be heard in the same voice as someone that he's familiar with. Yeah. So Moshe says, my father has come looking for me from Egypt. Amar lo, eini avicha. And God says, no, I'm not your father. Elohei avicha. I'm the God of your father. Vayaster Moshe panav, and Moshe hid his face. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha Amar, lo asa Moshe yafa, shehister panav. Moshe should not have hid his face. He should not have done that. She'ilule shehistir panav, haya megalelo HaKadosh Baruch Hu malamala, malamata, umasha hayatid lios. God would have revealed him everything in that moment if he had not hid his face. He was too timid. Rabbi Yeshua de Sichnin replies, even though Moshe was a little bit timid, Heralo Shalosh, God rewarded him with 3 things. B'schar Shalosh, Zachar L'Shalosh. B'schar Vayaster, with the reward of the fact that he hid his face. What did he receive? Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe. All of the times in the Torah where it says Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, it was in the merit of him hiding his face initially. B'schar Ki Yarei, that Moshe was timid, he was in awe, he was afraid. So, Vayiru Megesha Selav. He also experienced divine honor, that the people were afraid to approach him. Beschar Mehabit, that he was afraid to peer into the fire. Utmunas Hashem Yabit. He received the reward that he was able to be mebit, to grasp with the eye of the intellect the image of God. Rabbi Yoshua Rabba Omar Kavod Gadol Asa Moshe Sheistir Panav. It was a great honor that Moshe did for himself that he hid his face. Aval Nadav v'Avihu Poru Rosheyan. They uncovered their heads. V'zonu Eineya min Ashchina. And they devoured the divine presence. Shene'amar El Atzilei b'nei Yisrael lo shalach yado. That God decided to not destroy the youth of the Jewish people at that moment. Meaning they should have been destroyed, but they weren't. This is highlighting the tremendous paradox of the Jewish people's experience at Sinai. That there was a tremendous temptation at that moment to go all out, so to speak, and to consume the Giloi Shechina that was being revealed to them in an unfettered fashion. Whereas Moshe Rabbeinu is the paradigmatic, the ideal way of being able to consume Elokus, with a form of Vayaster, Ki Yorei Mehabit, with a certain amount of anava, with a certain amount of trepidation, to not go all out, to understand that we shouldn't be biting off more than we can chew. This message is not just a question of remaining in balance and not going too far. There's an actual directive of how you go about this. How does one go about addressing the need, the desire, the yearning for grasping onto Elokus, to relive, to revivify, and relive the experience of Sinai, while not going too far and going out of bounds as the Atzilei b'nei Yisrael did? This is the sod of the Eila HaMishpatim Asher Tasim Lifnehem. The mitzvos ma'asios, the practical applications of the Torah, the embodied, concretized mitzvos, are the way in which we maintain that balance. That's the ve'ele vav mosif al harishonim. If you want to know how to go about this, this is the way that you do it. And this is why the Torah repeats over and over and over again to not deviate from the mitzvos. It's a very, very interesting phenomenon you can understand if you could pretend to look from the outside in for a moment. Someone who's not initiated into the ways of Shmiras Torah or mitzvos. Someone who looks at the lifestyle of a Jew, it's very, very boxed in almost into this complex system of laws and applications and rules and Torahs and halachos and all. It looks very unique. Not that we're the only ones with religious laws, but the level of complexity and how it affects every single facet of life, it's very unique. It really is. It's unique. In many, many ways, it's unique. Perhaps the most central message of this Eila HaMishpatim, these are the laws that I'm introducing to you. Perhaps the most central theme of that is to be able to understand that this is halacha lamaisa, how we are able to give continuity to the experience of Sinai. The Yerushalmi in Shabbos says so beautifully, as we're all experienced Talmud learners, we have many lines of Gemara you come across. Sometimes it could be a quarter of the page. Amar Rav Huna b'shem Rav Papa. The Ikad Amri, it was actually Rav Papa b'shem Rav Kahana who said it in the name of all of the different versions of who said in the name of who said. Right? Okay, we believe you. It came from someone important, worth listening to. Why do you need to give me all the variations that he said in the name of him? The Yerushalmi says unbelievable. Im tuchal l'shalshel t'shalshel ad Sinai. If you can make the link, who I heard it from and who he heard it from, you should do it all the way back to Sinai. I heard it from my Rebbe, you heard it from his Rebbe, you heard it from Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what ideally you should do. This is an essential part of the experience of to connect the experience back to Sinai. Eila hamishpatim mosif al harishonim. We're trying to give continuity to Sinai. Just two very, very powerful examples of this, which we often overlook. We're going to be entering the parshios of the Mishkan, which is really the Binyan Beis Hamikdash. That's what it is. The imperative for the Jewish people to have a geographic epicenter where the Torah and Elokus manifests in the world. And Moshe is told very explicitly, Re'ei va'asei betav nisam, you have to fashion these vessels like I'm telling you, ka'asher ata mar'eh bahar, like you were shown on the mountain. That pasuk is often very overlooked. What does that mean? Make them in the shape that you were shown on the mountain. Pshat. What does that mean? It means that when Moshe Rabbeinu was up on the mountain, he saw the Beis Hamikdash. Talk about the Beis Hamikdash Shalmala. It's not some ethereal concept. He saw the ideal form of the Beis Hamikdash as it was up above, as Chazal say in the Gemara in Zvachim, right? Moro and the Shivas Tzion, the generation that came back to Eretz Yisrael in the time of to rebuild the second Beis Hamikdash. Moro, when they arrived at Harabais, Ro Saro Shalmala Michael Makriv Karbanos. They saw collectively a vision of Michael being Makriv the Karbanos in the Beis Hamikdash Shalmala, and that was the imperative for them to manifest that in a material, concrete way down here on earth. That was their inspiration, so to speak. Every Shabbos, we tend to say a piyut. This is at least in the Nuschos of Bavel, which all the Nuschos that we say today are basically influenced by the Nusach of Bavel. On Shabbos morning, we say a short piyut when we begin the middle brachos of Shmon Esrei. Yismach Moshe b'matnas chelko ki eved ne'eman karasalo. That Moshe had a great joy when he received his portion. Right? Ba'amdo lefanecha al har Sinai, while he was standing before you on Sinai. And Shnei luchos avanim hor biyado. And when he came down, he had 2 luchos in his hands. And what does it say on those luchos? V'shamu b'nei Yisrael es Shabbos. That's what it says. Okay, Moshe saw a lot of things when he was standing on Sinai, and there's a lot of things that it says on the luchos. What is the message that this piyut is trying to give us? The message is that when Moshe was on Sinai, when you go up there it's always Shabbos. Up there, it's Shabbos all the time. Right? As Chazal say, Mizmar Shili Yom HaShabbos, Liyom Shekulo Shabbos. We're hoping for a reality that Shabbos will be perpetually experienced. When we look back to Ma'aseh Bereshis, it says for every day of the week, right? Vayi'erev, Vayivoker, Yom X. Yom Echad, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi. What's the only day that it doesn't say that for? Shabbos. Shabbos is the only day it doesn't say Vayi'erev, Vayivoker, Yom Shvi. Never says that. It says Yom HaShishi, that's it. Right? What does that mean? It means that from God's perspective, Shabbos never ended. That's what that's saying. From God's perspective, Shabbos never ended. So when Moshe Rabbeinu enters that domain, that is the experience. It's the experience of the Shabbat, the completion of the world, the fulfillment of the divine will, Shabbat vayinofash. When he comes down with that written on the tablets, he says, listen, up there, this is what it's like. This is what it's like up there. And we have to make that, we have to concretize that down here. That is the message of the Ma'amad Har Sinai. That what was experienced there needs to be carried through forever. Chazal say in the Gemara in Chulin on Daf Tzadi Aleph. That Yaakov, as he's leaving Eretz Yisrael, and he stops for the night, and he has a dream, and he sees this image of a ladder. And there are angels of God that are ascending and descending. Tana, it was taught in a brisa. They rise up and they looked in the image of above, in the face of above. Says Rashi, the partsuf shalamala, in the image that is etched up above. The Yordim umistaklim b'diukno shalmata, and then they go down and they look at the face down below. V'hinei Hashem nitzav alav. Says Rashi, b'diukno shalmala, with the image up above, b'partsufo shel Yaakov Avinu shechokok b'kisei hakavod, with the image of Yaakov's face that is etched into the divine throne. And they would go down and see the actual physical face of Yaakov Avinu. And they were comparing them. They were comparing the two. And they saw that the diukno shalmala is the same as the diukno shalmata. What is being communicated to us over here? As Chazal say in Bereishis Rabbah on this parsha, in Parshas Vayetze, Sulam hu Sinai. Sulam is the first time that we hear about a structure that will connect this world to the next world. Misparo shel zeh ki misparo shel zeh. The gematria of Sulam, without the vav, Samech Lamed Mem, is the gematria of Sinai. There is a diukno shalmala, the image up above. What does that mean, the image up above? The image up above means the ideal way that things are supposed to be. That's what the image up above means. And there's also the diukno shalmata, and there's also the image down below, which most of the time is not ideal. We know that this world is a fragmented world, it's a constricted world, where things don't go as planned, things are imperfect. However, Yaakov Avinu brought about his whole essence was to make sure that the diukno shalmata, that the image down below, will resemble the diukno shalmala, in order to manifest the diukno shalmala down here with the diukno shalmata. That was the life's mission of Yaakov Avinu, and that was the nation that he produced. The nation that he produced, Am Yisrael, is meant to be the nation that can make the diukno shalmala manifested down in the diukno shalmata. This is absolutely critical and vital for us to be able to maintain our balance and groundedness in the context of Avodas Hashem. As the Ramban says so beautifully in his Parish on Shir Hashirim, Im ta'iru v'im ta'uru es ha'ava ad shetechpatz, that if you arouse and awaken the love until chafetz. Many commentators translate this as chafetz, like milashon ratzon, right? Like lachpotz, to desire. But says the Ramban, techpotz milashon chefetz, an object, until it has been concretized. You have to awaken the love until it can be concretized. If it's not concretized, if you don't do anything with it, it's going to dissipate. It dissipates. The experience of Sinai, as powerful as it was, if it's not made concrete, it will dissipate. And that's the best case scenario. The best case scenario is that it will dissipate. The worst case scenario is what the Rambam was warning us about in the incident of the Atzilei B'nai Yisrael. I'm going to read a few lines from the Midrash Tanchuma. This is in Midrash Tanchuma in Parshas Ba'aloscha. Moshe receives the commandment in Parshas Ba'aloscha, Esfa li shiva mish meziknei Yisrael, gather me 70 elders from the Jewish people. Ask the Midrash, v'chilo hoya lahem zakenim kodem lachein. He already appointed 70 elders, as it says in the pasuk in Shmos Chav Dalet. Vayal Moshe ve'Aaron nadav ve'avihu v'shivim ish miziknei Yisrael. There were already 70 elders. Why do you need to appoint a new batch of 70 elders? Ve'eichan hayu hazakenim. Where were those original elders? Ela b'shah shebo Yisrael osan hadvarim. When the people came to this sin, that they were all complaining, the isavu tava, and they were all complaining that they wanted meat. Vativar bam eish Hashem vatochal b'ktzeh ha'machaneh nisrafu kulam be'osasha. The original Sanhedrin of the Jewish people were consumed in Tav'era. Unbelievable. The actual Sanhedrin was consumed in the incident of Tav'era. In the same way the Nadav and Avihu were consumed from within and their bodies remained intact. In the same sin, the Nadav and Avihu, that they consumed too much, they had no trepidation, they had nothing holding them back. When they were at Har Sinai, so too these Shivim Zekanim, they experienced the same sin. The pasuk from the end of this week's parsha. Was there eating and drinking at Sinai? Like a servant who is serving his master. And the Eved goes, and he goes onto the plate of his master, he starts eating off of the plate of his master. Similarly, these people, Nadav and Avihu and the Shivim Ish Miziknei Yisrael, they acted in this inappropriate fashion. They took what was not theirs. And Nadav and Avihu and the Shivim Ish should have been wiped out at that moment. But because Matan Torah was such a momentous event for the Jewish people, he did not stretch out, he did not strike them at that moment, even though they should have been struck. This is the makor for the Rambam, what he says over here. And this is the great musar and the profound lesson that the Rambam is telling us, that in the most paradoxical way, the ability for us to achieve the continuity of Sinai, the highest prophetic experience that any nation ever experienced, the ability for us to give that continuity is to have the humility, the trepidation, and the impetus to apply in a concrete fashion that which was shown to us. And not go on the deep dive into pure ethereal spirituality. The Torah does not want this from us. This is not the Torah's plan. To end off with just a brief idea, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. There's a tremendous question that many of the Mefarshim deal with about why Olam Haba is not talked about more often in the Kisvei HaKodesh. It's not that it's never talked about. It's talked about actually a lot. Tchias HaMesim is explicit in the Torah, in Sefer Yeshayahu, in Sefer Daniel, right? The continuity of the soul in Sefer Koheles. It's not like it's not talked about. But the emphasis on it is basically non-existent. Never once in the Torah does it say you should keep the Torah so you get Olam Haba. Never. It never says that. Not even once. So Farshim deal with this. You should say, listen, if Olam Haba is so great, it should be on the list of incentives, no? Right? So there are different Farshim that have different approaches to this. I personally feel that the definitive approach to understanding this is, so to speak, ripping the rug out from the bottom of the question to begin with. Because the question assumes that we should be talking about Olam Haba, and for some reason we're not. But Rabbi Yehuda Halevi in the Sefer Kuzari explains to us, actually no, that's not true. We shouldn't be talking about Olam Haba. In the Mama Harishon, in Piska Kuf Yud Aleph, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi says the following: that the purpose of the Torah is to bring Elokus to the world. That's the purpose of the Torah. Olam Haba is not. It's not here. It's at the end. It's something in the future. But the purpose of the Torah, as he says, it's just beautiful poetic language. You can see that the same person that wrote the poems is the person that wrote the Kuzari, right? That the yearning of the true Eved Hashem, he lichvos as hanevua bakelim hagufanim, is to experience nevuah. And he also says vehadomelo, and that which is similar to it, meaning ruach hakodesh, right? In his material vessels of this world. This is what Chazal mean in the Mishnah and Avos, in Perek Daled, Mishnah Yud Zayin. Yafa shah achas, one moment, shall tshuva umaisim tovim, of repentance and good deeds, ba'olam hazeh, in this world, mikol chaye olam haba, from the entire life in the next world. How can you say such a thing? That's pretty crazy. One moment of tshuva and ma'asim tovim in this world is greater than all of olam haba. The Rambam says in Ilchos Tshuva, it's like, right, onig she'ein l'malim mimenu, it's a pleasure and a delight that can't even be described. How can you say such a thing? But this is what we're saying. In Chanami, if done correctly, one moment of tshuva u'maisim tovim, being and engaging in the world through the spirit of the Torah, through the spirit of Sinai, ve'ela mishpatim, vav mosef al rishonim, and tasim lifneim, and applying them correctly, is higher than the entire experience of Olam Haba. The vav mosef al harishonim. And it is the aspiration. It is the aspiration that we do not escape and float off into the atmosphere of Ma'amad Har Sinai, but rather we come down. We come down. If you want to really experience it, you got to come back down. As tempting as it is to stay up, you got to come down eventually. That's where the real party is. Bezrat Hashem.